I hear this question all the time on BiggerPockets and other real estate forums. Should I keep my rental property or should I sell it? It's a great question, and there's things to keep in mind when considering it. Today, we're going to go in depth about the things to think about when you are considering selling or keeping your rental property. My name is Shiloh Lundahl, and you are watching the Improved channel focused on real estate investing. Hey, before we get into this video, I just want to thank everybody who has subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome to build this channel and to help provide great real estate information to everybody who's watching. With that being said, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and let's get into the video. Today I'm going to talk about 3 things that you should keep in mind when considering selling a rental property. First, keep in mind your goal. What is your goal with real estate? Do you want to scale your real estate portfolio and get more and more properties? Or are you just looking to have maybe a handful of properties and pay them off over time, and then eventually, when you have no balances on the mortgages, you'll start raking in quite a bit of money in cash flow? Is that what you're looking to do? If it is, then you may not want to sell the property. However, if you're looking to scale, then it may be a good idea to either sell that property or do a couple of other things that I'm going to talk with you about today. The second thing to ask yourself is this property a problem property? If I ask myself honestly, would I feel happier if I got rid of that property? Or would I just kind of be in the grind again, looking for another property? If I look at this property and think, you know what, this is not a property that I really want to keep in my portfolio for long term, then the answer is obvious. You should go ahead and sell it. But if you don't mind keeping this property, then I would say you may want to hold on to it. What about the numbers? How do you know whether it's financially better to hold on to a property or sell a property? That's the third thing we're going to talk about right now. I've put the numbers down on an Excel spreadsheet to help us compare the numbers when it comes to keeping a property or selling a property. Let's go ahead and take a look. All right, we're taking a look at this spreadsheet that I created that helps us compare whether or not it's more financially wise to keep the property or sell the property. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the options you have when selling the property. All right, let's first take a look at this property, okay? So here's a property that we bought within the last year or two. And I'm gonna go over the numbers about this specific property. All right, so the purchase price was around $70,000, okay? We had to put about $10,000 into repairs, and the total cost out of pocket for us was about $80,000. And then the ARV, or after repair value, of that property was $100,000 when we were done with it. Now, I'm going to leave out a couple of different costs because there's a lot of details that we can get lost in. And so today, I'm just going to go over big picture rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of all of the other little costs associated with it. So just go with me on this one, okay? So buying this property and rehabbing it, we were able to increase the value by about $20,000. And so that was equity that we created in the property. Then we were able to work with the bank and get a loan on this property for about $70,000. Now there are closing costs when you get a loan, and that was about $5,000 on this property. So after we got the loan and we were able to recoup a large portion of the money that we had into the property, we had to leave about $15,000 into the property. So how did I come up with that number? Well, the purchase price was $70,000. The repair costs were $10,000, so that equals $80,000. Then we were able to get a loan for $70,000, so that's $10,000 of our money left into the property, plus there were closing costs, and so that's an additional $5,000. So when all was said and done, we left about $15,000 into this property. Now, our cash flow on this property, when you take the rent and you minus all of the costs. And in this property, we're going to say that this one is managed by a property management company. So this property makes about $200 a month in cash flow. So our return on investment is $200 times 12 to give us the yearly income of $2,400. And you take that $2,400 and you divide it by the $15,000 that we had to leave into the property, and that gives you a 16% return on investment. So now let's fast forward about 3 years of owning this property. All right, so the current value, because things have appreciated a ton over the last couple of years, we're gonna say that this property appreciated by 10% per year over 3 years. Now, I know that's not usual, but we're not living in usual times. So let's just say that it appreciated by 10% per year over the next 3 years. So now the value of the property is $130,000, okay? Now, we can go ahead and sell that property, but if we sell that property, we're gonna need to pay realtor fees, we're gonna need to pay title fees, or maybe attorney fees, depending on if it's a title company or an attorney that closes the property. Also, we may need to pay for repairs or some rehab, or the seller may request that we help them with their closing costs or some other concession or something like that. So let's say that if we take away 8% from the total sales price, we're going to come up with about $119,600. So now the mortgage, after paying it down over 3 years, is about $6,300. So with regard to the equity, we're going to go ahead and take the total that we can sell it for, and then we're going to minus all of the sales costs. And then we're going to minus the mortgage as well. And that's going to come up with, what our equity is if we were to sell it, okay? And so that total amount is $56,600. Now, let's say that the property, not only did it increase in value, but also rents have gone up. And if you've noticed, rents have gone up a lot over the last couple years. So now we're not just cash flowing $200 a month, we're cash flowing $300 a month. So let's take a look and see what the current return on investment is. And then we're going to talk about another return that's really important to think about. So if you take the $300 a month, you times it by 12 months, that's going to give you $3,600 a year in profit. Then you take that and you divide it by the $15,000 that we left into that property, and that's going to give you a return of now 24% per year. That's a pretty good return. That's twice what the stock market usually gets, or at least proposes to get. But let me talk to you about another return to keep in mind, and that is return on equity. You see, we have about $56,000 that we can pull out of this property right now. So having that much money into the property, the question becomes, would it be better for me to leave all of that money into the property, or should I take that money out? If I take that money out, I can use that to go and buy other properties if I am in fact trying to scale my portfolio. And so I really should consider what the opportunity cost is of leaving that money into the property. So right now, if you take that total cash flow that we get in a year, $3,600, and you divide it by the total equity that we have into the property, that's going to bring our return down to 6%. So in other words, we get 6% on our money by leaving all of that money into the deal. 6%, that's not doing very well. So rather than keeping the money in there, what I would suggest is, let's see if we were to sell it, and let's see what happens then. So right over here, if I were to sell my rental, well, you have the value being $130,000. Let's say that if we take away 8% from the total sales price, with about $119,600. Then you take away the $63,000 that I have left to pay on the mortgage, and that'll give you your $56,600 for profit. Now, if I take that as profit, I'm going to have to pay taxes on it. But if I've kept the property for 3 years or more, then the total amount in taxes are probably going to be taxed at long-term capital gains, which should be lower compared to personal income and other types of taxes that I could pay. So you just have to ask yourself, would I rather have that $56,600 now, or do I want to keep this property, hold on to it for a while, and then eventually get it paid off and just collect cash flow that way? Is the $56,000 today better than the long-term cash flow that I could make over time with this property. But wait a second. Rather than just thinking, should I keep it or should I sell it? Let's look at two other options that may actually be better than keeping it as is or selling it. What if you were to refinance the property? Let's take a look at that and see what happens. All right, right over here, I have refinancing the rental. So everything's the same. The numbers are the same. You have the property still worth $130,000. The current mortgage is still $63,000. Now, if the property is worth $130,000, then I may be able to get a loan on it for, let's say, 70% of the total value. 70% of the $130,000 is going to be about $91,000. So if I get a new loan for $91,000 and I pay off the old loan of $63,000, granted, I'm going to have to pay some closing costs again of maybe about $5,000. But even with paying those closing costs, I'm going to be able to take out of this property about $23,000. So my first initial $15,000, I get that right back. Plus, I get an additional $8,000 as well. Now I can take that $23,000 and I can go and buy another property. Or I can use it for something else that I need at the time. But now let's take a look at the cash flow, because when you get a bigger mortgage, if the rate stays the same, then it's going to negatively affect your cash flow. So let's take a look. All right, so if everything stayed the same with the rate and the number of years was reset to a 20-year mortgage, you're going to make about $165 a month in cash flow. You see, your cash flow was $300, but because you got this larger loan, now your cash flow goes down to $165. So why would somebody want to do that? Why would you be willing to sacrifice your cash flow? Well, if I can take that $23,000 and I can go get another property, well, this next property I get, I might make, another $150 to $200 a month in cash flow. So that would more than compensate for the lost cash flow by refinancing this property. However, if I'm able to buy this next property well, then what would happen is I'd be able to create equity just like I did with this property when I bought it under market value, and then I brought up the value through repairs. So I could just go ahead and duplicate that and do it again. Now what is my return on investment after the refinance? Well, again, I get $165 a month in monthly cash flow. Now my return is infinite. And why would it be infinite? Well, because the original amount that I had into the property, I was able to get back out, plus an additional $8,000. Now, what about my return on equity? Well, my return on equity is still pretty low, and partly it's because my cash flow went down, and I still have about $39,000 left into the deal. So my return on equity is still pretty low. However, I was able to suck out $23,000 out of this property. What if I were to do something just a little bit different? Let's say I'm not really particularly connected with this property, and I'm okay if I were to go ahead and remove this property from my portfolio. What if I were to do what's called a 1031 exchange? Let's take a look and see what the benefits might be of doing this type of strategy. All right, so again, the numbers stay the same. The property is still worth $130,000, and I can get out of this property $119,600 after I pay all of the closing costs. So I have to pay off the original mortgage of $63,000, and I'm able to get out again the $56,600 from this property. Now, what could I do with that $56,600? The beauty of using a 1031 exchange is that I don't need to pay taxes, or I can defer those taxes of the $56,600 for a later date. I can take that total profit and I can roll it into the next property or properties. So in this example, let's say I went and I found 3 more properties, each under market value, each needing some rehab, and I was able to buy them each for $100,000. So let's say I bought them for the $100,000 each, that's $300,000, and I put $10,000 into each of them, and I was able to increase their value up to $130,000 each. That means that all 3 of them put together would equal the $390,000. So if my total into the property is $300,000 for the purchase and another $30,000 for the repairs, That means that I'm totally into the property about $330,000, but I was able to create about $60,000 of equity through doing this process. And so there's my equity right there. And now let's take a look at the bank financing. So let's say the bank is willing to give me 70% of what the properties are worth now. Let's say I took them and I got them to be rehabbed and everything, and it took me, maybe 5 or 6 months to get everything done. So I'm able to then get a loan for 70% of the $390,000, which would be $273,000. And let's say rather than just having one loan on it, I went ahead and put all three of them together into a small portfolio loan of 3 properties. So that's going to help lower my closing costs by maybe a few $1,000s. So let's say my closing costs were about $10,000 and the total amount that I got in the loan was $273,000. So the question is, how much money do I have left into this property? So here it says that I have left into the property $10,400. So how did I get that number? Well, first, I have to take how much the total cost was. Well, that's $330,000. And then I need to add any of the loan closing costs, which was another $10,000. Then I can subtract the loan amount, what the bank gave me, the $273,000, and I can subtract that amount of money that I came in with that 1031 exchange. So I can take away an additional $56,600. What that means is I only have left into this property about $10,400. And if these properties cash flow about what my first property cash flowed, let's say only $200 a month, what that means is now I'm bringing in about $600 a month. So I only have $10,400 left into the property, and I'm getting $600 a month in cash flow. That means that my return on investment is 69%. Wow, I just took a property that started off making 16% and I was able to lift it up to 24%. And then through this whole 1031 exchange, I was able to take that and trade it in, and I was able to raise the return on investment all the way up to 69%. Whoa, that's awesome. Not only that, but the total amount of equity that was created was the $60,000 that I just created plus the $56,000 that I got when I sold the property minus the $15,000 that I originally put into the property. So how much is that all together? Well, 60 plus 56, 116 minus 15, $101,000 over a 3-year period of time. So when you're considering holding onto a property or selling the property, you really want to consider these 3 things. 1, what is my ultimate goal? Do I want to keep this property for the long term and just live off of the cash flow eventually? Or do I want to scale my business? Because if I want to scale my business, if I'm in a larger portfolio, the key is going to be to trade up to more properties. However, number 2, I need to think about, do I want to keep this property, or is this an ugly property, a horrible property? Does it cause a lot of heartache and pain? And if so, I just want to get rid of that property. So I go ahead and get rid of the property. Lastly, if I want to get money out of this property so I can go ahead and scale, then I really need to figure out what would be best. Should I go ahead and just refinance the property because I want to keep the property and take out some money, and then I can go ahead and get another property? I can scale that way. Or would it be better for me to sell this one property and then I might be able to trade it up into 3 more properties? And doing it that way, I can create quite a bit of equity. So hopefully this video is helpful for you in considering the benefits of either keeping a property or selling a property. Truthfully, there's not a specific right way because every investor is different. Every investor has different goals. And so I'm not saying that the only way to do this is to sell it or trade up. But what I am saying is consider your goals and then consider the heartache of taking care of the property. And lastly, consider the numbers. You want to do what's financially best for you and your family. So again, hopefully this video was helpful for you. If it was, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And I hope that you have a fantastic day.